Hey there. Ready to unlock some next level productivity.
Yeah.
Today we're taking a deep dive into the Pomodoro Technique and
No, it's not about cooking up.
no, not about food this
A
time.
delicious Italian dinner.
Though I do enjoy a good pasta dish, but yeah, this is about mastering your time
Exactly.
with this technique.
We're going straight to the source, Francesco Cirillo's book, The Pomodoro Technique, to kind of figure out why this deceptively simple method is so effective.
Yeah, and what's fascinating about Cirillo is that he doesn't claim to have invented some groundbreaking system.
Right.
He started as a student struggling to focus, just like so many of us.
Just like us, yeah.
And he used a tomato-shaped kitchen timer, hence Pomodoro, to hack his own concentration.
Exactly.
Okay, I love a good origin story, but it's more than just a cute name, right? It's about reframing our entire relationship with time, which, let's be honest, can feel like a recipe for stress.
Totally.
Sometimes.
Absolutely. The Pomodoro Technique isn't about cramming more into every minute. It's about understanding and working with our brain's natural rhythms of focus and rest. Instead of battling the clock, we're going to befriend it.
Okay, so how does that actually work in practice? Walk us through it.
Okay, so imagine this. You choose a task, you set a timer for 25 minutes, that's one Pomodoro, and commit to single tasking. No emails, no scrolling, just pure, undiluted focus. When the timer rings, you take a short 5-minute break. Then repeat that cycle 4 times, followed by a longer break of about 20 to 30 minutes.
So like interval training, but for your brain.
Exactly.
And I'm curious about this 25-minute thing. Is that based on something, or did Cirillo just pull that number out of a hat?
Well, it's actually rooted in our biology. Cirillo dove into research on ultradian rhythms, these natural cycles of energy our bodies go through. It turns out our brains are wired for peak focus in intervals, and 25 minutes is that sweet spot before mental fatigue sets in.
That makes so much sense. I know I definitely hit a wall if I try to power through for too long. Have you ever noticed that with yourself? That point where you just start getting diminishing returns on your focus?
Yeah, totally.
It's like our brains need those little refreshers to operate at peak performance.
Absolutely. It's like, if you think about it, if you're working out, you wouldn't...
Trying to pace yourself.
You got to pace yourself. You can't just go, go, go.
And that's where those strategically placed breaks come in. They're not just about resting, right?
Mm-hmm.
They actually play a key role in rewiring our brains to crave focused work.
They do. They totally do. I mean, that's the thing about it. Cirillo talks about how those short breaks trigger dopamines.
That feel-good chemical.
Yes, exactly, which then reinforces the habit of focused work.
It's like rewarding ourselves for staying on track.
Yeah.
And speaking of rewards, what does Cirillo recommend for those 5-minute breaks? What are some
He really stresses the importance of activities that are both energizing and easy to incorporate into your day. So things like stretching, grabbing a drink of water, stepping away from your workspace, just like getting a change of scenery.
So not scrolling through social media or getting sucked into a YouTube spiral,
No.
which is so tempting.
Right. But it's more about really disconnecting, recharging, so you can return to your work with a renewed sense of focus.
It's all about maximizing those bursts of productive energy.
Yeah.
Now, I know one of the biggest productivity killers for me is distractions, those pesky little things that just derail my train of thought.
Mm-hmm.
How does the Pomodoro Technique handle those?
So that's where Cirillo's capture and defer method comes into play. And it's super simple, but basically instead of letting every distraction interrupt your flow, you simply jot it down on a piece of paper or something, and then you just return to it later.
It's like giving those distractions a designated timeout corner.
Exactly.
I love that. Now let's talk about those bigger picture productivity tools that Cirillo introduces, the 3 sheets. The activity inventory, to do today, and record sheets. Can you kind of break those down for us? What those look like?
Absolutely. So think of the activity inventory as your master brain dump. It's where you capture all of those tasks, projects, ideas, anything that's swirling around in your head.
Got it. Okay.
The to-do today sheet helps you prioritize and select the most important tasks for each specific day.
So it's about moving from that feeling of being overwhelmed by a never-ending list to having a clear, actionable plan for each day.
Precisely. And here's a game changer. Cirillo suggests starting each day with a fresh to-do today sheet. This way, you're not carrying over yesterday's unfinished business and cluttering up your mental space.
Oh, that's interesting. It's like giving yourself permission to start each day with a clean slate, even if you didn't check off everything on the previous day's list.
Exactly.
Okay, now what about the record sheet? What's that all about?
This is where things get really insightful. The records sheet is where you track your progress. So how many Pomodoros did a particular task require? Were there any unexpected interruptions, things like that?
So it's not just about checking things off, it's about collecting data on our work habits, right?
Exactly. By analyzing our record sheets, we can identify patterns, estimate our time more accurately, and become more effective planners.
We start to understand our own personal rhythms and tendencies, which allows us to work smarter, not harder.
Yes.
It's like having a personalized productivity roadmap. Now, I think a lot of us struggle with accurately estimating how long tasks will take. I know I'm guilty of that. Like, way off sometimes.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
You're definitely not alone.
Like, it'll be 3 times longer than I thought.
Totally. But this is something that Cirillo actually addresses head on, this common pitfall. He argues that by using the Pomodoro technique and diligently tracking our time, we can become much more realistic in our planning.
Instead of setting ourselves up for disappointment when we inevitably realize we've bitten off more than we can chew in a day.
Exactly, yeah. It's about setting those realistic expectations and, working with our natural rhythms, not against them.
I'm curious about how Cirillo suggests we approach those larger, more daunting projects, the ones that feel a bit like tackling a mountain. Like, how do you even begin to break that down?
That's a great question. He has a great strategy for that, too. Cirillo emphasizes breaking down those massive projects into smaller, more manageable subtasks.
So instead of looking at the summit and feeling overwhelmed, we're creating a series of base camps along the way.
Exactly. He actually uses the example of preparing for a big presentation in the book. So let's say you have to deliver a presentation and the thought of even starting just fills you with dread.
Oh, I've been there. It can feel totally paralyzing, yeah.
Right. So instead of trying to tackle the entire presentation at once, you break it down into smaller Pomodoro-sized chunks. So researching and outlining the content might be 2 Pomodoros, creating the visuals might be another 2 or 3, then practicing your delivery could be a couple more.
Suddenly, what felt like an insurmountable task becomes a series of manageable steps.
Totally.
It's like that old adage, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Exactly. And that's precisely what the Pomodoro Technique empowers us to do. It allows us to break down those seemingly impossible tasks into bite-sized chunks that we can approach with focus and intention.
We've covered a lot of ground here, from understanding our ultradian rhythms to mastering the art of capture and defer. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about implementation. How do we actually integrate this technique into our busy lives? Because, let's be real, life rarely unfolds in perfectly timed 25-minute intervals.
That's a great question. And you're right, life is messy and interruptions are inevitable.
So how do we deal with those curveballs without completely derailing our Pomodoro flow?
Yeah, so Cirillo actually offers some really practical advice for that.
Oh.
He suggests that if you're in the middle of a Pomodoro and an interruption pops up,
Which, let's be honest, happens constantly.
all the time. Say a phone call or a colleague stopping by, you acknowledge it briefly just to see if it's something that can be addressed later, and then you just get right back to your focus work.
So it's about politely but firmly protecting those Pomodoro boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'd love to chat, but I'm in my power hour right now. Can I catch you later?
Yes, exactly.
Like that.
And maybe make a quick note of the interruption so you can circle back to it later. That way nothing falls through the cracks.
Right. Exactly.
I appreciate that he's not advocating for becoming a hermit, shutting ourselves off from the world to achieve peak productivity.
Right.
It's more about finding that balance between focus work and, navigating the demands of a busy life.
Yeah. And he also recognizes that using the Pomodoro technique in a workplace setting, especially if you're the only one doing it, can present unique challenges.
Right, because suddenly you're the one who's unavailable for those impromptu meetings or water cooler chats.
Exactly, which is tough.
Yeah.
So he recommends being transparent with your colleagues and even your manager about what you're doing and why.
Okay.
Just explain that you're trying this technique to boost your productivity.
Right.
And who knows, maybe you'll inspire them to give it a try.
Right. Lead by example.
Yeah.
Maybe your whole team will be conquering their to-do lists with laser focus in no time.
Totally.
So for our listeners who are intrigued by the Pomodoro technique and want to give it a shot, what's the best way to get started? Do they need to clear their schedules and order a tomato-shaped timer right this second?
That's the beauty of it. You don't need anything fancy to get started. A simple timer on your phone or even a kitchen timer works perfectly.
Okay.
Cirillo emphasizes that it's all about experimentation, finding what works best for you.
It's not about rigid adherence to the rules. It's about adapting the principles to fit your own work style and preferences.
Yes, precisely. And he encourages us to approach the Pomodoro Technique not as just like another item on our already overwhelming to-do lists, but as a way to cultivate a healthier, more mindful relationship with both our work and our time.
It's about taking back control of our focus, boosting our productivity, and ultimately feeling more in command of our days.
Exactly.
Love it.
And if the Pomodoro Technique resonates with you, there are tons of resources and variations out there to explore. But the most important thing is just start experimenting and see how it feels.
So there you have it, a deep dive into the Pomodoro Technique, from its humble beginnings with a kitchen timer to its potential to transform the way we work and live. It's simple, it's effective, and it's definitely worth a try.
Absolutely. And here's a final thought to leave you with. As you go about your day, pay attention to your own natural rhythms of focus and energy. Notice when you feel most alert and engaged, and when you feel your attention starting to wane. The Pomodoro Technique might just be the key to unlocking your most productive self.
We hope this deep dive has given you a fresh perspective, and maybe even a few new tricks for conquering your own productivity goals. Until next time, happy working.